Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
We lost our host, Jack.
Yeah, I wonder who's hosting today. Like we have like a quarterback room, you know, Sonia, yourself, me, and I'm not sure who the primary backup is.
Well, there's Sonia's back.
Well, that's
good morning,
Sonia.
everybody. I'm having some issues with my camera, so I'm gonna let Jack and Keith. Good morning, welcome to our show. Host here for a little bit while I try to get straightened out. Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome to the Friday Mac and Jack show with Keith, Jack, and of course, I'm Sonia here. And you guys download the Roku app and all that good stuff so you'll know when we are live. I hope everybody is having a great Friday, last Friday of the month here. And yeah, guys, I'll be back with you as soon as I can.
Good luck, Sonia.
Thank you, guys.
Right.
Well, I know, Keith, what the main topic of conversation is to start.
Yeah, the main topic obviously is the Knicks staying alive, right? Great game last night. Well, I'm going to share this to my group. So give me your thoughts last night real quick, Jack, and we'll go from there.
I mean, you got the feeling for the Pacers it was a little bit of a throwaway game. I mean, teams sometimes get a little too full of themselves. And I don't mean that the Pacers were cocky. I just felt they weren't so mentally up to this game. They didn't play their style of basketball. They were going, because they had a cushion to go into game 5 to Madison Square Garden. They were probably confident they could win that game, but sometimes you get confident just by showing up. There's not a sense of urgency because they knew there was a game 6 at Indiana. And then heaven forbid for them, there being a game 7 at Madison Square Garden, even though I think they can win in that scenario as they proved in the first 2 games. And the Knicks badly needed it, but you got the feeling before the game that the Knicks crowd seemed a little bit subdued, you know, but the Knicks got off to a good start, you know, and things went their way for the most part. You know what it is? We tend to analyze these games so much, you know, in every way, shape, and form. But Keith, it just comes down to this: shooting the darn basketball at the end. Shots that are barely missing. You make your shots, you're going to win. You don't make them, you're not going to win. And you want to get in position to get the best shot, you know, possible you can. In Indiana, you know, they seem to want to live by the three-point shot. And when the Knicks defense has gotten a bit better as the series has gone along, and they've kind of cut off the three-point perimeter somewhat. But in Indiana, they only shot 40%, and Knicks shot close to 50%. And in reality, that was the difference.
The Pacers can't play. They've got to play in transition. That's where they're best. If the Knicks force them into a half-court game, you're right. The Pacers seem to settle more often than not for a three-pointer, and not always the best one they can get. They only shot 33 pointers. I mean, only. Now we're to the point where 33 pointers is only 33 pointers. And the Knicks only shot 29 and didn't shoot particularly well from 3. My big takeaway is, and it's been the whole series, is number one, if the Knicks let the Pacers run and play in transition, they'll get killed. And we've seen it. When they slow them down and they get them into that half-court game, their defense can play well. And the bench, really the last 3 games, even in the loss they had in game 4, played better. There's an intensity from that bench Shamat played, Shamat, I'm not sure how you say his name. I'm probably saying it wrong. But he played his tenacity on defense on Halverson specifically and all over the court was really infectious, I thought, for the Knicks, and got that crowd into the game last night, too. Very impressive. Maybe you don't see a lot of big numbers off that Knicks bench, but really good. Well, Hart coming off the bench, I think, made a big difference as well. And his game was back. But the bench was getting significant they were productive minutes, right? Even though they weren't maybe showing up in the box score. I thought Knight had some big plays the last couple of games as well. And I think Thibodeau being a little bit flexible and seeing that he needed to, get some fresher legs in there at times has made a big difference here and got the Knicks back in this series.
Well, I think Thibodeau did it a little bit out of necessity because Brunson and Towns have been getting into foul trouble. And you don't want them to have 4 fouls at the beginning of, the second half. I mean, that's asking for big trouble. So when they have a chance to sit one of them for an extended amount of time because their bench is more than holding its own, they do that. And it pays dividends late in the game. Towns tends to pick up some silly fouls. And even if listening to the telecast yesterday with Stan Van Gundy didn't even trust Towns like a simple play, like with 0.6 seconds left. He says, I'm not that sure I'd throw the ball into him. He might commit a silly foul by pushing off. And but Towns, I mean, he's invaluable when he's, at the top of his game, the way he grabs rebounds. He's a force taking the ball to the basket. He's virtually unstoppable that way. And Brunson, the way he can take over a game, as soon as it seems like there's a little bit bleeding with the Knicks, that Indiana might be cutting a 20-point lead down to 12 points, you put the ball in Brunson's hands, and it's like he restores order.
He had his most consistent game, I think, of the playoffs last night, Brunson. He's been great the entire playoffs, but the turnovers were down. The shooting percentage was up. He was taking better shots and not forcing things. And to go back to your Towns comments, he needs to be more consistent, right? Sometimes he just doesn't seem like he's there and fully engaged. Last night he was, and it was doubtful. Well, he wasn't doubtful. He was questionable to play last night with a knee. There's no way he wasn't going to play. But I think they don't have anybody to stop him. When he goes to the basket, nobody can stop him not on his Pacers team. And I think he does them a favor when he shoots a 3-pointer, and he's a good 3-point shooter, but they can't stop him when he heads to the basket.
Can I just say one thing that's really been annoying me this series, and it's part of the NBA culture, and I know it's very minor on the big scale of things, but when a team has the ball, particularly Brunson, and let's say there's 17 seconds left in the period, I hate the way they waste time on the clock. They just dribble, take time off the clock, because they want to have the last shot. Okay, I understand they don't want Indiana to have a chance to have a shot, but they're not creating a good shot for themselves. They're just taking time off the clock. Brunson's actually helping the Pacers by just dribbling and taking time off the clock, and then mysteriously, like with about 5 seconds left, he's looking to create a good shot, and chances are it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
He takes a low percentage shot, misses, and it's a wasted percentage. You try to get a good shot as soon as you can, and if Indiana gets the darn ball back, so be it.
Well, you can run clock and also run your plays, right? Run your offense, and not just, as you said, stand around just running the clock down and throw up whatever. And I agree with limiting the Pacers' possessions as much as you can, but they should be doing it with some purpose, not just for run the clock out. So welcome back, Sonia.
Thank you. You guys know my magic question. Let me see. It looks like I got some feedback here. You guys know what my magic question is. It's the same question as I posed with Jack last week. Now we're at game 6, and we didn't really see ourselves getting here. Do you think this thing goes down to a game 7, or are the Knicks still delaying the inevitable?
Well, Sonia, who didn't see it going to game 6? Before the series, maybe it felt when it was 3-1, but they're going back to the Garden. Yeah, I mean, I think most people thought this was going to be a long series, but there were some people who arrogantly picked the Knicks in like 5 games. Just,
Yeah, or
they
the
would
Pacers.
dominate. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
or the
said 7,
Pacers.
so I wasn't there yet.
Yeah,
I picked the Pacers in 7 games, Sonia, if you recall, before the series.
I remember.
You
I
did?
remember. And the thing is this team is worn out. I mean, of course, Tom Thibodeau has been criticized for not really using the bench a lot, with keeping these veterans in throughout the duration of games. But I mean, it's paid off, and I'm going to be taking the opposite. I see the Knicks still winning this series.
I said Knicks in 7. I will stick with Knicks in 7. I think they've righted the ship a little bit. Thibodeau, whether it was out of necessity or not, Jack, as you mentioned earlier, has made some adjustments, used the bench more. Hart going to the bench. He's starting to get his rhythm back, his mojo back. He played probably his best game in quite a while last night, I thought. And as I said, Shama, I don't know how to say his name. Do you know how to say his name, Sonia? I cannot say the kid's name. I feel bad. Shama, close enough.
I can tell
Call him Landry. Call him by his first name. We call James LeBron. We call Jordan Michael. Call him Landry.
We'll call him Landry. We'll make him a star.
You need status to be called by a first name like Kobe Bryant. Kobe. That's all we called him. We never said Bryant.
Say his last name. I do have criteria. I do have criteria.
Well, you have to be a star to be called by a first name.
Well, I have the criteria. You need to be a star, or I can't say your last name.
You know what's funny? Brunson, we call him Brunson. We don't call him Jalen.
Right. So many Jalen on that team.
I haven't had to call people by their last name in life. I don't know why. Friends of mine, I'll call them by their last name. It's just weird. It's just it happens, and I think I don't know. I don't think it's disrespectful. It depends on the situation.
People do it a lot in law enforcement or military, and it kind of sticks. If you have that kind of background, or your family is, where you hear that a lot, it kind of transcends. You guys brought up Jalen Brunson. Of course, last night setting another most 30-plus point games in a Knicks single postseason, joining Patrick Ewing, who did it in 1990 with 5. Carmelo Anthony had 5. Willis in 2013. Willis Reed had 6 in 1970. Jalen himself beating his own record from last season, where he had 7 30-plus point games, and also joining Bernard King from the 1984 Knicks team with 8. Jalen, of course, putting up 10. He's now had 10 30-plus point games for the Knicks postseason. So congratulations to him. And this is the thing. Everybody's calling Tyrese Halliburton hallelujah and everything. Where there's this trend on TikTok now. It's what the hell Leonte, what the hell Berry. Last night, the thing was what the hell, because Tyrese went from 24.5 average points from games 1 through 4 to single digit number 8 last night. 2 out of 7 field goals when he's been shooting 46%. Only no 3-pointers last night. 2 attempts and no successes, and only 6 assists, and overall ranking a negative 23 ranking when he's been positive 28 all postseason, Keith and Jack.
Well, I would give the Knicks defense some credit for that. Only 7 shots last night. I talked about Landry, because I can't say his last name, playing some great defense off the bench, adding some energy. He played great defense on Halliburton when he was in the game, and I think it rubbed off even on some of the starters. I think Bridges played better defense. Bridges played some good defense at the end of games through these playoffs, but not necessarily consistently. And I thought you saw it last night. And as far as the negative numbers, they're always fun to look at. But when you get beat by 20 or more, everybody's going to be in the negative anyway. So
everybody.
Forget about yesterday's game. Halliburton's coming out with a vengeance in game 6. The whole Pacer team will. And the Knicks have to be mentally into this game as if it's the 7th game to them, which in reality it is. It's so hard to gear it up and be 100% there mentally game after game. You can do it for 1 game, maybe a 2nd game at most. But that's why teams don't come back from 3-0. They usually never come back 3-0. and rarely come back from being down 3-1 because it's such like a mental strain. You really just you got to be up for it. And I don't know how up the Knicks were for yesterday's game mentally per se. I guess they felt a lot of comfort, playing at Madison Square Garden. The Pacers went up for that game mentally. But this sixth game for the Pacers, they're not going to have an attitude that they have a cushion of a game 7 because it's going to be in Madison Square Garden. If game 6 was at Madison Square Garden, it would be in the back of the Pacers' mind, well, worst case scenario, we go home. You can't help but think that way. I even comparing it to another sport, I remember Peyton Manning once said, he said he was talking with Eli, and they were saying, well, when we know in field goal position and we have to field goal, we're maybe just a tad less aggressive than if we had to score a touchdown because it's in your mind. You have like an option. And even though the Pacers have a 7th game at the Garden, they're going to dread the idea because if it goes back to Madison Square Garden, they lose their advantage.
Yep.
It's all even. And if anything, the Knicks have a tiny advantage because they're playing at home.
Well, the Knicks are also 6-2 on the road in these playoffs. One of those losses was in Indiana, yes. But so I don't think this is going to be as big a burden as it might be for some other teams. I think them they had to win last night, but I think that made them only 4-5 at home in the playoffs. So they haven't had that huge, which the Knicks usually have one of the biggest home court advantages in the league. And I know I put a lot of credit in the home court advantage. Jack, you put less in it as a rule.
No, it's important to an extent, but let's not get carried away with it.
Well, I think these Knicks kind of prove that my argument isn't always 100% correct because they've been better on the road than at home.
Well, let me tell you what. Can I just say one thing about yesterday's game? Why it was extra important to the Knicks in a way no one wants to talk about, no one wants to think about, and I think most people would be dismissive of. If they lose game 6 at Indiana, okay, it's very disappointing. They got eliminated, but it's not as big a disaster as if they lost game 5, meaning they went on 5 games and lost all 3 home games at Madison Square Garden. That would be really ugly and would make it a really bad off season. Okay, they lose in 6 to Indiana, big disappointment, but it cushions the blow just a little bit.
The guys who are really negative, no matter what, if we lose this, they lose this series, they'll still be the people calling for Thibodeau because perspective always changes, right? 3 weeks ago, if you said the Knicks were going to lose in 6 or 7 games in the conference finals, we'd all been very happy with the season, I think. Now that we've gotten here, blew a 14-point lead with 2.5 minutes left, there's going to be a certain different view of this team if they, in fact, lose. And I think it's still a good season. So I
think there'll be a more of a negative view depending on what happens in the NBA Finals, because I think OKC, my opinion, would make short work of Indiana. And if they swept Indiana and the Knicks lost to a team that got swept in the finals, it would kind of show people how far they are away from actually winning a championship. So I think that might have something to do with it. If the Pacers win a game 6 and they go on to upset OKC, people are going to think, darn it, they beat OKC, they beat Cleveland. No disgrace losing to this team.
And good morning to J Train, and good morning to you, Rick. Thank you so much for joining us. J Train said the Knicks have a pulse, guys, and it's on for game 6.
I think he said they lose in game 6, didn't he? I was kind of ignoring that.
Wait. Jay Train's been listening to Stephen A. Smith. He's been playing it both ways, I know.
Oh, he did. He said, but it's over in game 6. Jay Train.
We'll talk Sunday morning, James. We'll see if we're still alive for game 7. That's my
winner of this game, going to be facing SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and company. The Oklahoma City Thunder literally brought the tsunami against the T-Wolves. Anthony Edwards and crew deferred, declawed, and back in Minnesota today.
Can we put a pin in the Anthony Edwards as one of the greatest players in the NBA talk? Because this guy disappeared, except for one game. He disappeared for the entire season.
But
They
he's
like
a
the
team
Homer
player.
Simpson and the Bush thing, like.
No, Anthony Edwards is a team player. He's not a prima donna as far as the team goes. I mean, he has this little noise about him off the court, but he's a team player. Let's not put him down. He tries to win, but the bottom line says you have to think of Anthony Edwards. Do we slightly overrate him? Because we talk about Anthony Edwards like he's one of the top 5 players in the NBA, but in reality, he's probably one of the top 15 players. You could put him anywhere 12 to 15. You could put him in maybe a shade ahead of a Tyrese Maxey, put him in the category of a Devin Booker, maybe a tiny bit ahead of him, perhaps. But he's not one of the, top players in the league. I put him behind Brunson.
Way behind Brunson. Great players have got to be able to, at times, put the team on their back, and he doesn't do it. He disappears with the rest of the team. Brunson's out, and that's how Brunson doesn't have his faults. He does. But I think Brunson's head and shoulders ahead of Anthony Edwards. And maybe it's just the bravado. Maybe Anthony Edwards, I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm just saying he doesn't seem to step up in the big moment when other players do.
Well, the beginning of the series, I'm sorry, Jack, go ahead.
No. I was just saying Anthony Edwards tries to be a team player, spread the ball around, get everyone involved. So
that's good.
He's not a selfish player.
There's good, but there's times where your team needs you to be selfish. That's my point. I don't like selfish players if that's their whole persona, right? But there's times where Brunson, as I said, can be a black hole like Carmelo was at times. But he also gets other people involved and does it all. But when it's time to take over the game, he knows when that time is, and his team needs him to be selfish. And I think he steps up, and more often than not, it works out. And I don't see that same gene in Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, Jay Train said it best. I mean, Ant-Man played the size of an ant. You guys watch all the series, the Marvel series when Ant-Man's big or he's little and gets
Love Ant-Man.
He's little Ant-Man, but he did, guys. He shrank. He had shooting struggles, field percentages had diminished. Turnovers were higher, and especially in the latter games of the series, significant dip in his production because the defense for the Thunder was so strong. I mean, he only had averaged like 23.8 points in 10 of his final games, including both of the series. But against OKC specifically, this game, he was held under those 20 points in 3 of the 4 losses, and that's pretty big. One of his productions, of course, single-handedly. He was for 31 guys of 3 points in that last game. I mean, stark contrast for last season. So I don't know who started this talk up of him being the face, but in comparison to SGA, there's a stark difference in teams because the Thunder's MVP was Shai Gilgeous, and he outscored him by a very significant margin, and especially with that defense that OKC brought in, that definitely helped to neutralize, no pun intended with him being the size of an ant, neutralizing him, making it difficult for him to get anything. Because you guys talk about him spreading the ball around. He had to spread it around because he couldn't take the shots.
Yeah.
But Sonia, you have a mindset that a team has to, at the very least, go to the NBA Finals, at the very least, if not win a championship. Otherwise, they're reluctant to run it back, depending on the team. The Timberwolves 2 years in a row have gone to the Western Conference Finals. They've had success, and they did make a big move, in the offseason, trading Towns and Julius Randle. So they didn't want to run it back with the same exact, formula that they had that got them to the Western Finals last year where they lost to the Mavericks. But there was a replay with Randle, Towns, but they had success. So what do you do if you're the Timberwolves? Do you run it back and take your chances that you're going to break through with who you have? It's not so easy to make a deal. I mean, if you're the Timberwolves, you think you're going to get Giannis? What on earth can you offer to get Giannis? to get some impact players. Sometimes there's no choice but to run it back. The Celtics are probably going to run it back with the same crew for one more year. They're going to think they're going to have a healthy Porzingis, and Tatum. We don't know when he's going to come back during the year, but they'll probably run it back. But certain teams are going to make moves. Like there's a good chance the Bucks move on from Giannis. They can't win it. I mean, the Nuggets are probably going to run it back, but you kind of wonder is their window closing a little. But how do we measure success exactly? If the Knicks lose the next game to the Pacers, should they run it back with the same exact team they have? What deals are out there that you can make? I'd be reluctant to split this squad up.
The Knicks, for instance, I don't think need to make major changes in this team. They need to improve the bench. We know that, but you can do that in this league. You can find those types of role players. Again, the thing with OKC is, SGA is a great player, but they've got some guys who know their roles, and every team that's really successful has those kind of guys. And a guy the Knicks miss a lot this year is a great player, a great role player, knows his role. Hartenstein has played a really big part, in my mind, in OKC's success. Yeah. You don't always see it in the box score, but he didn't see it in the box score with the Knicks either. And they miss him off that Knicks bench a lot. And that's the kind of players I love to watch play and make a difference. We don't think they do because they don't put up the big, shiny numbers, but they make a difference during the course of a game, especially in the playoffs.
Well, you have unlimited. You don't have unlimited money to pay guys. And he was Hartenstein. He was getting a big contract.
He took the money, and
it looked a little sad to me watching the game. You see a PJ Tucker who's forged a reputation as a tough defender in this league, an old veteran player sitting at the end of the bench with his warm-ups on. And there's no way he's even considered getting into the game at this point. And you look at a number of guys, and this is on any team, they remind me of sparring partners, or they are practice squad players. They have a purpose, helping the starters during practice, but their chances of getting in the game are virtually nil.
PJ Tucker's one of those guys I was talking about, though. When you go back to Milwaukee's championship, he was one of those guys who knew his role, right? He wasn't one of the big three on that team, but he knew his role, and he was as important to them winning that championship as Giannis was, in my mind.
I mean, this is one of the things you guys talk about, whether or not, Jack, to answer your question about Minnesota and their talent. Having Anthony Edwards is not going to be enough because everybody they faced in the postseason has had a tougher defense, has had a more solid offense, including more people up there to help them. But you mentioned something really big. Of course, the draft coming up here next month. They got some financial issues to look at before they can go out and get some big name like Giannis. Julius Randle is one of the player options that he was acquired in the Karl Anthony Towns trade, but he has a player option for next season. Now, it's likely they're going to keep him, but that's going to impact their financial flexibility. They've got to look at, Naz Reid. He's another player option. He's the sixth man of the year, also a player option. Crucial piece, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, unrestricted free agent. They got to look at all these people as well as Mike Conley. And if they're willing to move some of these people around to go after somebody as big as Giannis, I don't think they can actually afford that, because what they need to do is look for somebody that can be more of a playmaker, more of a solid point guard, because even if they kept Mike Conley, I mean, he's getting up there, guys. His potential.
Randall.
Yes, less and less.
Randall's got a lot of miles on him. The Knicks, Thibodeau ran him hard for the years he was in the Knicks. So, yes, you're right on both counts.
Yeah, he's coming in with some miles already on him. And then, of course, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a younger, more dynamic player. But you've got to get somebody in there that can help with the maturation of that team. Getting Giannis would be a great piece to them, because that would give them a solid opportunity to run it back and face more tougher opponents next season. I mean, you guys agree with that?
It would be a great pickup, I think, for Minnesota, but I'm not sure Giannis, after playing all these years in Milwaukee, wants to go to Minnesota. I think he wants to play someplace where he might get a little more exposure and not get lost in these smaller markets. Just a thought on my head. I think he wants to win, so he's going to go someplace he thinks he can win. the Knicks would have been an obvious choice if it wasn't for the Towns trade last year. But the Knicks don't have the wherewithal to go get them, I don't believe anyway. So
you can if you want to really split up your team, but now you'd be talking about the two-star system, Brunson and Giannis together.
Yeah.
And that hasn't shown it necessarily is going to work. I mean, we saw what a disaster it was with Phoenix, matching Durant with Devin Booker. We talked about all the championship possibilities, and with Bradley Beal being the third wheel, it just doesn't. Damian Lillard going to Milwaukee, we thought that would put them in the mix, winning the NBA title, and they weren't even close. And you get one star, you match him with another star, it affects the chemistry. Like Brunson, for example, with the Knicks, he's running the show. You put the ball in his hands, everyone basically has to get out of the way at times. But you put him with a Giannis, Brunson couldn't be as bold, just taking over the offense. He'd have to defer somewhat on large part to a guy like Giannis. And would the team be as effective? That's the issue. They would both put up wonderful numbers, but would it translate into victories?
Well, it didn't work, and to a lesser degree, Randall's not the player that Giannis was, but it was a similar dynamic. And before Brunson got there, remember, the ball went through Randall. Randall really ran that offense from the forward position before Brunson got there. So you see how they had to figure it out and try to defer to each other, and it never really. They played better. I think the Knicks played better Randall's last 2 years. When one or the other of them was hurt, I think they played better.
The team that's going to try to make a bold move, I think, would be the Lakers, if they could somehow pull it off. But the question is, to match, to get a third wheel to join LeBron and Luka, do they have the chips? I mean, I think the biggest chip they would have would be Austin Reeves, just off the top of my head. But I don't know that they have the chips, but they have a way to somehow figure it out to get it done.
Well, they got LeBron. He's a chip, but he isn't going to Milwaukee.
No, he's not going anywhere.
And I forgot to mention the T-Wolves do have Jaden McDaniels there as well. Forgot about him. J-Train says to you, Jack, he owes you an apology. Chet Holmgren looks like he can actually be a star. So
he's never going to be considered a star numbers-wise. He's never going to put up these dynamic big numbers that are going to be eye-catching, but his value to a team, I'll compare Holmgren, his value to OKC now and going forward. It would be the equivalent of what Kevin McHale's was to the Celtics. No one thought of McHale as being a superstar. When they talked about the stars in the league, they usually didn't mention McHale's name, but everyone realized he was a great player and a future Hall of Famer. Isn't
he one of the top 50 of all time when they named that team?
Yeah, but you don't think of a Kevin McHale as a superstar.
Not when you're playing with Larry Bird, you're not.
Right, exactly. You're always going to know your place. Like, you're always going to be behind Larry Bird. Exactly.
But he was you're right, because he was a big piece of that Celtic team's winning those championships. I don't think they win without Kevin McHale, quite frankly.
No. Yeah, so kudos to those people. Let's move along to some small NHL news. And I mean, we're going to speed over this like we're on the interstate, because I'm upset about my Kings going home with these raggedy Panthers from Florida. Of course, they are now getting, for the second time in as many years, the rematch for the Stanley Cup Finals against the Edmonton Oilers, who defeated the Dallas Stars as well. Highly anticipated rematch, guys, coming up here, defending champs, Florida Panthers. And that's pretty much all I got to say about that.
Just to go back to the Canes real quick, there's no moral victory for finally winning a game in the conference finals after losing 15 in a row in the conference finals. No moral victory for that one win.
I would say it is. I would, but
I'm waiting for the Toronto Maple Leafs to break through. They're my story year after year in the playoffs. I mean, the way they don't get it done. What's ironic? We talk sometimes about who would mean more, which city to win a championship. And like the last 6 finals or something have gone through Florida, with the Tampa Bay Lightning and now the Panthers. And I know there's a rabid fan base in Tampa Bay. I mean, hockey's bigger in Tampa than baseball is. I mean, believe it or not. I mean, the Buccaneers are number one in the NFL, and the Lightning second, and then the Rays third. But consider what it would mean, to Edmonton winning the Stanley Cup as opposed to Florida repeating and winning it again.
Well, Edmonton's also carrying away to Canada, not winning a Stanley Cup in 33 years or whatever it is. Something it's 30 some years. So,
and this rate, we'll be glad if we can still compete with them next season, because no telling what's going to happen with the Canadian issue and everything else being screeched to a halt. May start trying to peddle with some sports there, but kudos to those teams. Of course, I don't have a dog, cat, or cane in the fight right now. So it's going to be a great
for our Canadian friends. I'm rooting for our Canadian friends to break this streak and win a national. Win a
Sonia, and the Carolina Panthers or the Carolina Hurricane, what would be big? I mean, who's more popular in the Carolinas?
So I don't know, because I would say the Panthers, but we've been losing so bad. It's probably the Hurricanes. I mean, they've at least made a solid playoff push for the last couple of seasons, and it gets an interest in of a lot of NFL fans and other sports pundits in the area that really, have been kind of bowed out from earlier sports. So it's nothing like a good competition of any sport that we can hold on to some type of championship hope.
I'm curious, and Jack, you might know this because you're, maybe you're closer to that area than I am. Did any of the Hartford Whaler fans transfer to Carolina when they left Hartford?
Well, no, I'm not close to Hartford, but no, that wouldn't be any type of.
I wouldn't think so, right? I mean,
no, not any type of link at all. Geography-wise, that's not always the main issue, because obviously when the Brooklyn Dodgers moved to LA, they took a lot of New York fans emotionally with them. And even to this day, there's a little bit of a carryover where there's some New Yorkers who are Dodger fans because, they grew up that way. Like their fathers were big Dodger fans. And then Sandy Koufax was a Brooklyn guy. And Gil Hodges was a Brooklyn guy. So
there was a lot more history there with the Dodgers than there were with the Whalers. I only bring it up because
in Brooklyn. I mean, that's what I meant. Not just played for Brooklyn.
Yeah, I only bring it up because the Whalers came up on my show here recently because they just had the 50th anniversary of Gordie Howe and his sons Mark and Marty, I think, playing together in Hartford.
I mean, but when you think of Gordie Howe, you think of the Detroit Red Wings. You don't think of them as a Hartford Whaler. I mean, at least I don't.
Absolutely not.
I go back so far that there was only 6 teams in the NHL.
Well,
they started following it. Can you believe that? Only 6 teams in the NHL.
Wow.
Someone told you it would be all over the place after the way they expanded.
It was that way until like the early 60s, wasn't it, before they expanded?
Yeah, I don't understand. I'm watching a little bit, not too much, I'm not going to lie, of the United Football League, okay? And there's a franchise in St. Louis. I mean, I would think St. Louis could support an NFL franchise. I mean, they used to have the Rams. They lost it. I don't get it. You need to tell me the stadium wouldn't be full.
2 teams.
Yeah.
2 teams, not 1. They lost the Cardinals, too.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't have an NBA team either.
They can't support
the
stands. The fans and the stands are not consistently supported. Like he said, they've had 2 opportunities. And, that actually gets really worrisome when you start to see a trend of participation over the years. That's actually come up in Charlotte with the Panthers for, especially with us being the talk of the town about the pricing of tickets and things like that. When you cannot fill the stands consistently over a period of time, because now we're going into this 10th year that there's been a downward trend. There's been some talk about the team being relocated years ago. I hope it doesn't go that route, but I mean,
that's interesting because that's a huge. The area is growing leaps and bounds, right?
It is.
In the last 10 years, it's really blown up. But MLB talks about every time we talk about expanding into Charlotte when they can't support the teams that they've had there.
Yep.
I don't know why they would consider doing that.
They have the Durham Bulls. The Durham Bulls have been there for a while. The lower league baseball, but they've been. I mean, you're right. I was just in Charlotte this past weekend. The traffic is just as bad as it is in Atlanta in certain areas, and not even built conducive to hold those type of people. But a
Right.
lot of people that are coming to the South, they get stopped in Charlotte before they get to Atlanta. And you would think, but those people are just there for other purposes. They're not, or they come with their own, like Jack said, geographical teams that they already support from wherever they're from.
Right. Great
Kind
point.
of like I'm a transplant in Atlanta, but I bring my team. Speaking of football, guys, OTAs are in full swing. Some big news: Christian McCaffrey returns to practice with the 49ers after being out basically the whole season. So congratulations to him and good luck to him, because he's got some ongoing issues actually. Achilles and knee injuries in both legs. Stephon Diggs, your guy, Keith, under
It
review
starts
now.
already.
Under
Let's
review.
Let's go have a party and not go to OTAs.
Pink crystals on a
What?
boat.
Do we have any idea? I mean, I don't know what designer stuff might be pink, but it's a little suspicious to me. I don't know, but whatever.
They're gonna handle it internally, they're saying. And the bigger news.
I think he will have a visit with Mike Vrabel very quickly. I'm sure.
Vrabel's the one speaking out about this, of course. And the bigger news: Kirk Cousins, TJ Watt skipping voluntarily work. Kirk Cousins holding out now, making a more visible stance that he is wanting to be the new quarterback for the Falcons and refuses to even attend these OTAs. And in fact, it's out there that he's willing to go to the end on this, including when they're mandatory, where he's starting to basically get a fine, guys.
He's not going to.
Sonia, I was going to thank you a little while ago for not mentioning Kirk Cousins, but there you go. You couldn't help yourself. Kirk Cousins has got nothing left in the tank.
Yeah.
He's not going to help a contender. Yeah, you have him as a backup somewhere. I mean, he's a little better than Joe Flacco, maybe at this point, maybe not even. Kirk Cousins doesn't represent the future of any team. He should just shut his mouth, stay with the Falcons, be a backup, use a little common sense. Michael Penix has an injury history, so chances are Kirk Cousins is going to see the field. And the reason Michael Penix is a starter now is because Kirk Cousins played miserably. He was lousy. He did it to himself. Shut your mouth. Be a good teammate. Get your money. If they're going to trade you to an ideal spot, you got a no-trade clause. So I'm not saying he should go anywhere. But maybe you're going to trade him to a place that's appealing to him, and you make the darn move. He put himself in this predicament by playing lousy.
I don't normally defend guys who hold out. You got a contract, you should live up to it. That's always my mantra. But if somebody's got a gripe, it's Kirk Cousins, because the Falcons have screwed him over since the minute they signed him. They did nothing to help him win last year, except draft a guy to replace him.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think Kirk Cousins will not be a Falcon when the season starts. I've said it for 2 months now. He will be the starting quarterback. And I'm not saying he represents their future, Jack, only their present. He'll be the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers for the season.
See, Kirk Cousins is not a franchise quarterback.
It was. I didn't say that. Did not say that.
He's not someone like Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, who you're building your team around, who you're accommodating.
Who's that guy in Pittsburgh?
He's not that guy.
There is no guy in Pittsburgh. I'm not saying that's who he is. I'm saying he wants out of Atlanta. Atlanta doesn't want him around. He's going to get traded before training.
Atlanta's not just going to give him away and pay him his money.
This is going to be another Denver Broncos situation where they were paying Russell Wilson still while he was going everywhere else. June 1st coming up, guys, literally in a couple of days, Sunday to be exact. And that's when the NFL's post period becomes very crucial. The teams start spreading out their dead cap over the next couple of years, which is going to make it more financially appealing to release or trade certain high salary veterans, which Kirk Cousins' name definitely coming up, and Tyreek Hill as well with the Dolphins are those people who are mentioned in being moved around and some type of restructuring. Yeah. I don't know, guys. Of course, Aaron Rodgers' talk is Terry Bradshaw called it nothing but a joke at this point with him being linked to the Steelers. And he actually has come out and basically said he'd be willing to retire as a Green Bay Packer. Just a mess.
He's just, if he plays, he's going to get off his bench or his couch like Joe Flacco did. He doesn't want anything to do with training camp. If he plays, it'll be because somebody called him during the season and talked him into coming back. And I don't think I would like him not to play anymore because he ruins his legacy more and more every day. Just by
No, I don't think so. He's in the news all the time, and
for anything
I
good.
don't like the chemistry of Pittsburgh. I thought of something that I don't think we ever discussed on any of these shows. Has there ever been a case in the NFL where a quarterback was very highly drafted, but he never really played for that team because he got beat out? Case in point, we see this farce of a quarterback competition in Tennessee between Cam Ward and Will Levis, okay? And the coach is being just a plain out fool by calling it a competition, because if Will Levis wins it, you diminish Cam Ward. That's the worst thing you can do.
What Will Levis can do.
You can't. No other excuse. But let's say it really is the competition, and they start Will Levis, and let's say Will Levis turns out to be the quarterback that Keith Engel projected him to be. Could there be a scenario where Cam Ward just never sees the field for Tennessee? Have we ever had that in the NFL?
Will Levis has already showed what he can do. They would be idiots to start him at this point. There is no competition. You drafted this guy, number
Right,
one.
absolutely. You don't diminish. I understand what Andy Reid did with Patrick Mahomes. He made it clear Patrick Mahomes is going to sit the first year. Alex Smith is the quarterback. That's fine. That's debatable if you want to do that. I can understand it. But that wasn't a competition. Highly drafted guys could lose their job in time, but I'm talking about, has there been a scenario where they never saw the field altogether?
Trying to think of a guy. I was thinking about Trent Dilfer, but he got a chance in Tampa before he went to Baltimore and won a Super Bowl. But I can't think of a guy who never got a chance, and I don't think that'll happen. Cam Ward would have to really be awful not to win this job. I mean, I think it's just a competition for namesake. And again, I don't see a problem giving him competition because the idea is play the best guy. And if Will Levis were all of a sudden to find it, then he should play. But I don't think that.
Will Levis plays it as well. You drafted Cam Ward. What's he going to be, a career backup there? Will Levis is young. Give me a break. You drafted Cam Ward with the sole purpose for him to be your quarterback of the future. Case closed. I can understand if during the season he's struggling badly. You replace him at that point. I can understand him, but you don't diminish your hope of the future right off the bat. Urban Meyer did that with Trevor Lawrence. He had him in the quarterback competition with what's his name over there, the backup who kicked around. I'm having a brain freeze on that.
Who was it? Who are you talking about? What team?
Yeah, Jacksonville. Urban Meyer called the quarterback competition when Trevor Lawrence is drafted. Now, Trevor Lawrence got his job, but you don't call it a competition because your number one overall pick conceivably can get outplayed in big picture to bring them along that you're looking at.
But I can make an argument that you can also diminish his future by letting him go out there and getting his head kicked in for about 6 weeks, ruin his confidence, and he never makes anything of himself.
You don't call it a competition. You're saying something like,
you say he's not going to play.
We're not sure who's going to start. It's not a competition. We're going to, bring him along nicely. We can't promise he's going to start, eventually we expect him to start. We don't know when it might be. There are ways of handling it. Don't call it a win or lose competition. That's what I mean.
I get it. I get your point now. If you're saying, if you got a guy, you're going to say, like with Patrick Mahomes, that was a perfect situation, but Alex Smith was a competent NFL quarterback at that time too. So it was Will Levis has not, despite my projections, has not been a great player, and I don't think you can name him the starter and say he's going to be the starter right now. I'm surprised they didn't bring in a veteran that they could possibly do that with, because Cam Ward, I watched Cam Ward play every down last year as a Hurricane fan. He's a great player. He's got some serious faults that need to be corrected in the NFL, or he's going to fail. And he would benefit from not playing out of the gate, but.
I was thinking the same thing. They needed to have a veteran to come in. I mean, I hate to call it the Green Bay way, but that's literally kind of what I think about when Green Bay literally shapes and molds their rookies under the guise of a qualified veteran, and they just continue to win. I mean, we see it even with Jordan Love. What do you guys think about there's clearly a competition in Cleveland, though, Jack. I mean, with Shedeur Sanders, they said he's really pulling out all the stops up there, but they've got like 5 quarterbacks, 4.
The big story to me, Sonia Keith, is not who's going to be the starting quarterback at Cleveland, but who's going to get cut now, make the team. Whoever goes to the practice squad is going to be picked up.
It's got to be Dylan Gordon. It's got to be Gordon.
I mean, Dylan, you mean?
Yeah, I'm saying it's got to be Dylan. He was drafted ahead of.
He was drafted third. You don't release a third-round draft pick.
Yeah,
that's the thing about it. That's too high a pick.
They're not dumping
Kenny Pickett is looking good.
Yeah.
How do you move on from Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco's there?
Kenny Pickett will be elsewhere.
The veteran presence. I don't see them cutting Joe Flacco. They gave him some guaranteed money. That's going to be hard to cut him. And Shedeur Sanders, if he's truly looking good in training camp, and you cut him if you're Cleveland, wow, that could really come back to bite you too.
I think Kenny Pickett will be elsewhere before the season starts. I think it's going to be Flacco, Gabriel, and Shedeur is going to be the 3 quarterbacks.
But the intriguing thing about it is Kenny Pickett could go from anywhere to being the starter to being cut. That's how erratic things on Cleveland. But if he's looking good, Kenny Pickett's got experience. If he looks good in training camp, how do you wind up cutting a guy like him?
Well, it is the Browns. They might cut all 5. Who knows? And sign Cousins.
I mean, that's what I was actually thinking about. But I mean, it's such a debacle with them. I don't ever remember seeing so many people actually compete for one role. Small plug in here, Keith David Andrews, 10 seasons as the center with the Patriots. They're going to be having a press conference for him on Monday at Gillette Stadium. He is announcing that he is retiring from the NFL. He spent his entire 10 years with you guys, they signed him as an undrafted free agent out of Georgia in 2015. So when we talk about signing players as undrafted agents, we look at, Shiloh Sanders is down with Tampa Bay, is undrafted. No word right now on his production, but he has a great attitude. I mean, was this a shock? 10 years doesn't seem like
they cut him during the offseason, so he's just coming back to retire. They couldn't find another job. He's been injured a lot the last couple of years. He was a great player. He's the last tie, if I'm not mistaken. He's the last tie to any of the Super Bowl teams. I don't think there's anybody left.
Yeah,
he's on the offensive side of football.
The big news, I think, with the NFL now with signings too is the Trey Hendrickson situation.
Yes,
because the players are like speaking out, on behalf of Trey Hendrickson, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. But Jamar Chase and his sidekick T. Higgins got their new contracts. What are they horning in with Trey Hendrickson? I know you want to support a teammate, so you make a comment. And Joe Burrow's the lead of the team. I understand that. But these guys have signed contracts. I don't want to hear later on, well, the markets went up. Let me tell you something. If the market went down, do you think a player's going to say, okay, you can re-sign me at a lower price now? Come on. Everyone wants the teams to take the whole risk. Let him become a free agent. The Bengals gave him permission to look elsewhere and work out his own deal.
This is why the Cousins holdout's a little bit different than our normal holdouts. And I am so against holdouts because if you've got a contract and all you want is more money, you shouldn't have signed that long a term of contract. You should have signed something shorter so you can negotiate when your contract is obsolete. And all these players do. It happens more in baseball than football because of just the nature of the game. But you can't give team. I say this all the time in baseball. I used to drive me nuts. It still drives me nuts that we give them long-term security, but then they want out of their contract as soon as somebody's making more money than them. Yep. You can't have it both ways. I'll give you one or the other. Give you lots of money in the short term or lots of money in the long term.
And you were mentioning
I'm sorry, Jack. I like the idea when they talk about the contracts that have the caveats in them, the production caveats. Like if you're not playing this many snaps, then you're not getting paid this amount of money. Like I think it's better for teams like and the players because you're just sitting over there collecting a check, really.
It's the world I live in. I got paid for the last 40 years based off my performance, and I was fine with it year after year. And it was year to year, man. I could be gone at any day.
Any day. Especially
The NFL
Well, yeah, and you don't know the attitude of the
off on that.
you don't know the attitude of the player when he does get his money in certain cases. Hassan Reddick, big problem with the Jets. Now he's with Tampa. He misses an OTA, and there's a little talk they might have a little problem with him there because he's probably not happy with his contract there. And, you know, the players have to see, like Trey Hendrickson, they really don't have the leverage. They think if they don't show up, they're affecting the team, which they are to an extent, and that the team is going to come around. But he really doesn't have the leverage because if he sits out, he's only going to miss game checks, and he's not going to get a better deal in the future, you know, especially when you're over 30 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the same thing. I mean, it goes back to this sense of entitlement that I always talk about. Some players are there. Once they get the money, it becomes a financial competition, and it just makes it really disinterested, especially when we're already talking about lack of enthusiasm with sports and their actual engagement anyway. As we get ready to wrap up the last probably 2 minutes, let's talk about some MLB news. Mike Trout is expected to be activated off the injured list for the Angels today. Of course, Yankees are facing the Dodgers in a very high-profile series this weekend, guys. We talked about Dodgers being former Brooklyn Dodgers. Perhaps there's some New Yorkers that are still fans of them against the Yankees, Jack.
Yeah, it's a possible rematch, you know, in the World Series. You never know. Yankees are going with Max Fried tonight, who's been the best pitcher, you know, baseball to this point this year. And maybe, you know, there's a way to send a little bit of a statement. You know, I don't know whether that's important or not, but if it is, let Max Fried shut the Dodgers down and, you know, show that way the Yankees have an ace, you know, and make a little bit of a statement. But, you know, it might be important, the series, it might seem right now, but let's be honest about it. A few weeks from now, people aren't going to really care that much what happened these 3 games.
It matters in the World Series. It was great to see them match up last year after not having played in 40 some years in the World Series. So it was a lot of fun. Even
well, that's the World Series, but I'm saying people are looking at it a big rematch, Yankees Dodgers. It has a lot of magic, but there's just other games at the end, even though it creates a much bigger.
I'm not an interleague play guy anyway, so I'm not big on these Mets, Yankees, Dodgers. I don't care. I'd rather see them play in their leagues until the playoffs. That's what I'd like to see. So
yeah, it's going to be exciting. They play tomorrow night, 7:15. Then they play again on Sunday. Yep. I mean, Jack, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's 3 games. I mean, it's going to be fun. The Yankees and Dodgers. It's always like it's so historic. I mean, I think it's the single most historic rivalry in baseball history.
It is. That you get a call, Jack? Jack's getting a call, I think.
No, that's me. That's
Keith Engel. And yeah, let's get. I've got to pick up the Keith misses the block, and I get tackled, and I'm told I can't. I'm not running the ball well.
Nobody pays attention to my status on teams at work. They just ring me. Doesn't matter if I show I'm not there or not.
That's the Patriots calling Keith to give him some breaking news.
They want to know what to do with Stephon Diggs. I'll have a conversation with him right now.
Absolutely. Of course, June 2nd, that being next Tuesday, there's going to be a public memorial for Jim Irsay, longtime Colts owner. Tributes pouring in. Of course, he passed on last Wednesday. And just a heartfelt tributes everywhere. The Colts Nation, definitely a great guy, one that really was connected with the team in so many ways. So, of course, we send condolences to that organization and all those affected by him and his life and love. And guys, we got a big sports weekend. Keith Engel got shows throughout today. Jack, J Train, and myself will be on tomorrow with the debate show that we have every Saturday. And of course, Sunday morning at 8 a.m. sharp, we will have the big sports show. We'll be talking about, of course, all the news we previewed today from the weekend. And with that, we bid you all a good day and have a great weekend.